assignment, and they can collaborate using the same environment. And the same application that we use to interact on our it's the same application that's used for the session. So students don't have to download anything else. It's just one single application, and that's all they need. They have access to their courses, assignments, tests, and online collaboration with the same thing.
Plus, it's the only online meeting software you guys don't buy. You bought this one, you know. You guys have Zoom. You have like 5 other ones. So this would be number 6, and you'd have them all.
I'm not getting into that one.
So that content then only in that course, or can you download it and put it in a different course?
Great question. So so you can always get that link and publish that to any course you have, or you can download as an MP4 format and then
control it.
Yeah.
Go full caption it, go edit it, make it a lecture.
Exactly.
And that guest link, so that guest link could be like it's just like a little study group. You know what you're saying?
Exactly.
And then anybody say, hey, you guys want to meet up? Here you guys can meet up from 6 to 8.
Yeah.
Whoever wants, and any of you guys want to talk about the lecture, you guys can go and just meet. Not me.
Exactly. You don't have to do anything. Like, so I have a course room right here on top. I can create a session, and is that allowed, like a study hall or let's call it study room, right? So the guest role will be moderator. Let's make that presenter. So that basically gives them access to sharing their screen, sharing files, you know, using everything in there, but they cannot boot each other out. So maybe keep it civil. So you can make make everyone a presenter, and then you can decide, you know, it has no end, and then just basically click save. And that will be added into the sessions for the environment for the course, that particular course, and students will have access to the session right here, right? So you can say, you know, students, they can say, hey, let's meet in the study room for this course. One of the things, I mean, we understand that all students have access to Google Hangouts and, you know, Skype, and there's many software out there. The thing is that when you're participating in a course, you can have all those credentials for all the teammates or everyone that's working with you, and that creates a lot of organizational hassle. So everyone that's in the room, everyone that's in the course has access to the same tool. They just click on it or touch it, you know, press on it on their phones, and that's it. You don't have to exchange your Facebook or your whatever email or anything. Everything's inside the course and can let you collaborate.
And as they're talking, we can access all the files.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can preload like group work content. I don't know if you guys are heavily group work. Yeah, so that's a really great system. You guys are dedicated to something else like Zoom, then you can not start it, you'll never do it. But this experience is closer to teaching and learning, especially of our LMSs than any other secret experience. You're using it for meeting outside of the LMS, but they're all kind of the same for meeting. GoToMeeting, WebEx, Zoom. You're not in the learning management system, they're all the same. They have varying levels of closeness, being a student and teaching, by how deeply integrated they are. Ours is the thing is like nobody can touch it. Then they have varying levels of like quality, right? Like Zoom you may like the quality of the interaction, like video audio a little better than BlueJeans or Big Blue Button or a couple other low cost ones.
So our approach is to embed the synchronous learning environment with the asynchronous learning environment. So basically the LMS married to a virtual classroom in the same, as you can see, it's the same design language, the same interface, it's embedded into the course. So students don't feel that they're moving from one system to another, which kind of creates that. It also makes support a bit more confusing and difficult, right? So, you know, and again, we build this for education, so it has breakout groups, it has polling in there. You know, again, no need for extra software. Okay, so let me go back into the course. So one thing that is really important for faculty is obviously creating content, right? Adding content to courses. So adding content to courses, like, you know, the files that I have here, I have a video, a Word document, So let's say that I want to add that document right here. So in this area. So let me zoom in here a bit. So every time that I see this little plus sign, that means that I can insert something. And what I can insert is, can be content from other courses. I can upload files from anywhere, right? I can bring in content from third-party vendors, which I will show in a moment. I can bring in from my own Blackboard content. But if I want to drop a file in there, I just grab that file from the desktop and automatically uploads that file in there. One thing that I like to also show is if I have a folder with several files, so let me bring in this here. So this is, I only have a couple of files in here, for example, but I have this folder and I want to add that folder, let's say here. I can just drag and drop that folder in here. It will create a folder inside my course and all the files inside that folder directly under that. So if you have content in your desktop or your Dropbox or anything, you can just, drag and drop that directly into the course. Now, as you can see, the content, when I upload it initially, is hidden from students, but I can change that by just clicking that, and that will make it available. I can also make content be available depending on certain situations inside my course. So if I click on conditional availability, I can then tie this to performance, and I can say, well, if the student, has, 60 points or higher in this one, then show that content. So then you can create a progression and have content activities appear as students, meet a certain threshold in the form. Let me delete that because I use this for demonstrations. Yes.
Let's say that I created a document on my desktop, and the document is big enough to have arrows and then I slide it over. See, but after I slide it over, a day later, the students calling me and say, "Are you sure you have that arrow in the right spot?" And I go in and just make adjustments for, in that site, or do I have to go back to my desktop and do it?
So in that case, what you can do is, so I uploaded that document, right? So you have to use the original software so that you, like Word in this case, and then basically replace that document with the new one. So there's no versioning. So there is versioning inside the system so that we know that there was a replacement and there's a previous version, but we do not provide Word editing inside the environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're working on integrated review and markup options, but those are primarily around grading functions, where you get a document from a student and you want to highlight, markup, and back.
Yes.
I don't think that there's been as much demand for in this deep home where I build or change documents. Typically that's done in a better program. PowerPoint will always be better at that than we will, as will Adobe, whatever your home program for your generation. Probably, unless that's something we need to build, we just have to do that.
So I have to insert this comment about a roadmap. So I'm going to talk about items in the roadmap. Those might change in the future. So that's something that I have to say. It's like a statement. But we are working with Google. There's a possibility that in the near future we'll have something like a Google Docs assignment, in which you can upload a Google document and then directly edit that, or have students edit that in the Google Docs interface directly inside the environment.
It'll all be driven by Google's super good about APIs. You can pull out stuff you build out of API running inside of somebody else's frame.
Yeah, so we're really not in the business of creating word processing software.
We're not going to out Google or out Microsoft. Of course.
Yes. So let me look into activities and how they look, how they, appear. Okay. We have content that was created inside the Blackboard environment, because if you don't have a document you want to add, a new item into your course, you can always, do that here, right? So we have, this is a document that was created, basically a web page created inside Blackboard. So the way that we create something like that is by selecting again the same plus sign and clicking on create. And then instead of a folder, we just select document, right? And this helps us add text. I click back for whatever reason. So if I want to add text, I have some text here preloaded in a Word document that I will just basically copy and paste in here. But basically, this is as you're familiar with, what you see is what you get. Text editor that's embedded. I can modify text, change the format of the text, add lists, add mathematical functions, chemical reactions, equations and whatnot. I can add links to it. I can add images and videos. I can embed videos from the web. And this is where I can insert either local files as attachments, or I can, whenever it says content market, what the content market means is that I can bring in third-party content from other vendors. So if I'm using McGraw-Hill, if I'm using SameAge content, if I want to add a link to a particular item within those publishers' websites, I just click insert content market file, and that will take me, in this case, I haven't configured it for the course, but I can see here, these are the major publishers that I have configured in my environment, and these are the tools that have already been configured for me by the administrator. Yes?
Can you also use that same link to bring in a PowerPoint?
You can bring in any file you want. So you can, if you want to add a PowerPoint presentation to this area, let's say, you can, just like I did before. So let's say I have some text in there, kind of an explanation, and I want to add a file. I can just drag and drop my PowerPoint directly. Does that make sense? Yeah.
That was a good She smiled.
Is that a good aha?
She was like,
They'll let us do that.
They don't let you do that. Well, yes.
I saw where you had like those textbooks and everything,
Yes.
and right now I see the one that I'm using, before the right, this stuff, the other one. Now, as you know, colleges, schools change textbooks, for years, and so do we have to make sure that we get the rights to those? You know what I mean? Like, let's say we change the Pearson.
Of course.
What we have to make sure that we support it before we look for that textbook.
Well,
yeah, I can answer.
yeah.
You can answer.
Well, yeah. I mean, the reason why I'm not adding it is because I don't have no rights for those textbooks right now. Yes, that's the way that their model works. So you do have to have rights before you
So
can
we have to make
engage.
sure that we're gonna get a new textbook. The textbook is in line with.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ways to do it, right? So there's like Wild West, which is like you pick a book and you go to any technology integration. Maybe it comes with something like a MyLab or like a digital book or something. And there's information in the book. So the student's like, oh, okay, I'll just go register my own account. Nothing to do with the LMS, and like that's on their own. And then there's like one of the middle ground steps where you're like, I'm using that MyLab Mastery Connect, whatever it is, version of the learning environment, like remediation in my course. So I'll connect to the course, right? So maybe they'll get an access code, and as a teacher, you'll register a section, and they'll go into it. And then there's like closer, more seamless environment in which they just show up on day one, and their stuff's in the course, right? There's nothing for them to do because as an institution, you partner with somebody, sometimes a publisher, sometimes an intermediary, just make sure the course materials are there on day one, and everybody gets them, and maybe there's a fee as part of the course, and they'll buy it separately. And that's not always an institutional decision. Like maybe business does it one way, or nursery does the other way. We support any aspect of that, but there's no, like, the things you see on here us having a connection with that publisher so that their experiences can show up in the course. The licensing process goes into stuff.
Yeah, so a good example of what is possible, what is connected, and what's built in. So on top is everything that's possible, right? So you'll find, like for this course, I found that book. It's not an institutional thing, but that is something that I'm going to use. Right here are the institutional tools. So I have a connection to Kaltura, which manages video, right? So that's already in there. So it's just about clicking that plus sign and adding that into the course, right? And when it's pre-built, you know, the course will be created for you with all the connections and, you know, pre-built. Well, I wanted to just add that video in there, but basically this is how we can add documents into the course without, what is this? And I can then, once I'm done with it, I can just make that visible to students and that's it. Now, notice how every time I click into something like this, right, you see that animation, something is sliding in. So one of the things that we want to avoid is, you know, faculty and students be confused about where they are in the course. Right? So every time you click on something, instead of having that page kind of move you into somewhere else, everything slides in, so you always know where you are. If you notice on the left side, I have all the tabs that I visited, or all the pages that I visited. So if I click on the left, they slide a bit, so I can see. And if I want to go back to the course, I just click that, and it slides that out, or just click on that big X. If I want to go back into, you know, where I started, I click on the black area, and that slides everything out. Again, so I never lose where I am, right? So one of the things that we want to make sure is that every time you see an item inside the course or inside the environment, you can click on it and go directly into that environment. We want to reduce the amount of clicks that it takes you to go to where you want to be, right? So if you want to go grading, it's just a couple of clicks away. Yes. So in the phone, we do have the slides, but if it's the space is reduced, instead of having them be on the left, because that will take too much real estate in the screen, they go on top. So it's the same mechanism. It's just instead of going to your left, it's on the top.
So is the default that anytime content is added, it's always not visible to students, and the instructor has to activate everything that, okay.
Yes. So let me go back into content here. So solar system, I had some items in there, uploaded some documents. I have an assignment, right? So this is my assignment area. Now, the way that we envisioned assignments or activities in Learn is that we know that there are certain types of assignments that are natural. Assignments and tests and discussions, we all know about those, but we sometimes want to create activities that are not necessarily classified in one. So sometimes we might want students to submit a paper, but at the same time respond to a couple of questions. So we can add questions to assignments, and students can also submit files into tests, right? So let's call them learning activities, but they all have a capability to be configured to fit your needs. Now, so in here, I have tests, I have a bit of text, and my settings for my assignments. So I have the due date, the category that is going to fit inside my gradebook. So I might have assignments that are, you know, quick assignments or in-course assignments. So I can classify them, create categories for different types, and then I can group those for grading purposes in my gradebook. And I can do that from here. I can add rubrics. I can change the amount of attempts that are, you know, associated with this assignment. I can align those with learning outcomes so that If my institution wants to do some program level assessment, they can then look into every assignment that was submitted around a particular program goal and then extract that information without having to go to me and ask for student artifacts. And finally, the Safe Assign report. So there's a lot in there, so I will go step by step. So I clicked on the configuration setting, so I can change that. So again, categories, assignments, quizzes, number of attempts, and then I can select which one is going to be the grade for this assignment. So if I have multiple attempts, I can say, you know, it's going to be an average of all the grades. So it can be the first attempt that actually has a grade from me, or the last attempt with a grade. Again, it depends on how you want to grade all of these, or the lowest grade. Then you can grade using points, letters, percentages, obviously the maximum score. I cannot edit the time limit because students have already started this particular activity, but you can set an assignment with a time limit, you know, might be useful. I have a rubric that's attached to this assignment, and I can see here the criteria and the different, you know, levels of attainment in here. You can see here it's attached to a particular grade. So, you know, this criterion right here is at 10%. This is 50, 30, and 10, right? I have enabled Safe Assign. Safe Assign, are you familiar with Turnitin? Well, Safe Assign is similar to Turnitin, but it is a service that's included as part of Blackboard Learn. So Blackboard Learn users or instructors can use Safe Assign, no additional cost as part of the base core product. So that, you know, and it's deeply integrated with the assignments inside Learn. So let's look at how we grade this assignment. So I can see that there are 3 submissions for this one. If I click in there, I have the list of all my students, right? Sorry, I used the 2 fingers and it goes back for whatever reason. You can see here that these already have the originality reports in there, and because they have a red X in there, that means that they are at high risk of maybe some plagiarism in there. So let me look at Mark's, which is the one that was submitted. That's the one I uploaded on my phone. If I click on the attempt, so I have here my document, and I can grade that with my rubric. As I click my rubric, it will, you know, take me to the next criteria. Let me go into one that I've already submitted. So no, this is Mark. Let me go into Jeff. So Jeff has a 68 out of 100. So if I click in here, I can see that this is a high risk of plagiarism because, I'm sorry? It depends if I checked it so that he can see it. Yes, he can. So when I'm setting the plagiarism settings, I can have it so that they can see their scores. If I click on the report, I can see that he has copied it. Well, let me make this a bit clearer. So I can see the different areas. So some of the text came from the internet, some of it came from another student, and they're highlighted in here, so I can just look at different sources. Yes.
As a Spanish teacher.
Yes, it does do Spanish as well.
Spanish, and does it do Google Translate as well?
It doesn't translate, but it does. So if the submission is in Spanish or French or any other language, it will search as well.
But it won't detect if it was in
If
Google.
it was, let's say that it was taken from Wikipedia in English and then translated into Spanish and then pasted in there, it will not detect that, fortunately. However, I think that Google Translate is not that efficient, and you can probably see that the Spanish there is not.
And also the students have figured that out, that wave is gone. There are websites that probably have it in English already, so there's some new fires. And this is the service that we that actually is available for Moodle rooms as well. And so Moodle rooms, you have the choice to either turn it in or sit aside. As with Blackboard, it's just with Learn, it's been part of the course for a long time. And for Moodle rooms is new, just hasn't been available or part of it nowadays.
So yeah, on the left side, I can see the file. Oh, sorry, I deleted this one. Always happens in demos. But I can see what happened with the rubric. So these are the rubric scores. I can always change the overall score, even if the rubric automatically calculated the score for me. I can change that 68 for a 70 because probably he doesn't need to fail this particular activity. I can add some feedback in here, and I can add text feedback. I can add a video. Right now, it only has video from the web, but in the following months, again, don't hold me to it, in the next couple of months, we will have an option to record a web video directly from Present. So you can, sometimes assignments can be very lengthy. You can always add some annotations or some comments directly in the file that was submitted by students, but sometimes it's easier to just record our feedback while we're looking at the document. Right? So these are basically assignments. So let's look at something else. So you see how, okay, so I probably shouldn't have done that. On the top right side, you see this icon here. So I've enabled conversations. So every time I add an item into my course, so it could be an assignment in this case, it could be a test, it could be a content item. Let me go into my test here. So every time I add something like that, I can enable, as an instructor, I can enable conversations. So basically, conversations are spaces in which students can post questions about the assignment or item. They can basically, you can also provide a bit more context and respond to those students' questions in that conversation space. So let's call it a Q&A forum that's attached to those activities and items in the course, without having to go and create a discussion forum that's for Q&A or kind of provide that extra space. So every time we add something, we can enable that so students can post one question. It's general, it's open to everyone in the course. You can respond to that, and again, everyone has access to that conversation. And in that case, I'm just opening it up for students to have that conversation in this this item in here. I can, like, this is just a document that I created. I can just click allow class conversations, and that will enable the little conversation icon on the top. And that way, again, students can pose questions, or they can say things like, hey, you missed this thing, you were pointing at this, and maybe you should be pointing there. And that is where you can have that conversation. Now, every time that I have an activity, just like that, that assignment, I can look into what's going on with the student. So I click on the student activity report, and I'm sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Which makes Zoom possible.
Yeah, there's something that dealing with my, sorry about that. So let me go into actual site. So every time I post an activity, every time there's a learning activity, there's this report that will be created that lets me know a bit about how students are performing. So it gives me information about how long it takes students to submit this this assignment, how long it takes them to open the assignment. I can see a grade distribution. I can see how many students haven't opened the activity. I can see how many students have started a draft but haven't finished it. How many times they've submitted. How many students are submitting this multiple times. and it's giving me some more contextual information about the learning activity. And the type of reporting changes depending on what type of activity I'm talking about. So this is an assignment, so it gives me some information about the assignment, but if I go into a test, it will give me a bit more information about the test, right? Again, so kind of a grade distribution in there, how many submissions. Now, this is not super visible right here because this is my test student, so I've used this several times. But if you look into the kind of marks in here, every time there's a mark, so when a student goes in and starts taking the test, every time the student answers a question, then that will be marked. Every time the student saves a draft, or every time the student moves from one page to another, or from one question to another, all of those informational items are recorded into the system, so that I can see right away, but just looking at the graphics, you know, if a student is having an issue with a test, or maybe a student has way too high a test score for the amount of time that was involved in taking a test. I can also look at the you know, more detailed view of, you know, how students interacted with the activity, and I can download all of these reports and, you know, probably send them to students or to, you know, staff inside the institution. Let me look at a test so you can have an idea of how tests look like. So on the left side, you can see the test content. I can add some images, test questions. Yes.
What types of questions can we add?
So,
Choice, true, false, obviously.
yeah, so right now we have open questions, you know, multiple choice, multiple answer, and true or false. At the end of the month, we're adding filling the blanks and more question types. So we started with 90% of the questions that are being used in tests around, you know, our client base. Most of the tests basically have those 3 or 4 basic question types, but we're adding more types of questions on a monthly basis. Tests have time limits. Again, they can be categorized, so you can have quick test, or, you know, snap quest, or test, or, you know, final test, or whatever. Time limits, when students, you know, when the time limit is set, that test can be taken away from students, so even if they haven't finished, multiple attempts. And then you can also tie in safe assign to tests. So if the student has to, let's say, submit an answer, right, you know, basically develop a long answer, safe assign will automatically check whether or not that answer was taken from someone else's test or from another source. Yes.
I'm sorry. Is there like an override feature? So the student missed the test, they lost their internet, you can go in and let
Oh,
the
definitely.
student
Yes.
go in
Yes. You can either delete the original or you can add extra attempts. So it depends on how you want to do
that
it.
only works for a student, nobody else kind of sees that.
Exactly. Yes.
Let's say a student is taking a test and they're writing, and they put out time and it closes.
Yes.
Is everything deleted? Is it a zero?
No, no, no.
submission,
It saves everything in the test so far, and that's what's submitted. Yes.
As you select something, it's like Google Docs.
You talk, yeah, once you click it, we record that you clicked it, and we save the answer for you. So
This is a good point, I think, to talk about design philosophy. So we talked a little bit yesterday, we got to attend, and then Woodward's presentation around mature product, your big releases twice a year, we delay those releases, the core code. But like 6 months, we can clean them up and vet them. Ultra is a monthly release at least. And so what you see here is that we probably released what we would call a minimum viable product, like a base LMS, right? And then every month we just add stuff to it. So like you'll get more question types at the end of the month. Next month you maybe get whatever's next on the list. But it's every month, and we can show consistently for the last, I think it's like 18 or something more releases we did. A monthly feature add. we skipped one last year. I think we did 11, not 12. I think it was because the feature release landed on like false starts. And people get mad when you mess up their classes the first week of class. Understandably. So, but yeah, it's a very different philosophy. You know, we're taking it for approach on this one, but I like it for a lot of things that we do.
So right now I'm looking at a test that was automatically graded. So these are the answer submissions for, from the student. I can add, again, feedback to the student whether or not it's required, right? And I can, of course, delete those attempts and have the student attempt an extra. Or if the student has been selected with, that requires accommodations, students with accommodations their tests are not taken away from them, and they can take multiple attempts as well.
So we can do like an override, this person needs twice as much time.
Yeah. So you've seen how I've graded assignments, how I've graded tests. Let me go into discussion forums. So I think those are the major items. So I have this astronomy in the news section, discussion forum. So I can see, students have been participating in here. Now, every time there's a new post in there, that will be highlighted with a different color. And as I go through it on the page, it will change. On the right side, I have, the settings. This has an actual due date for the participation. Again, it has been aligned with an institutional goal. I have students that have participated actually here, and I can select Mark, and that will highlight just Mark's participations. As you can see, that's, those that are kind of pinkish. And you can see also how Mark has collaborated. So it shows where that comment is inserted inside the discussion, so you have a sense of context. If I go into grades of participation, again, it takes me into that list of students. Some of them have already been graded. Some of them have some items in there that I haven't graded, so they're highlighted as well. If I click in there, it's going to take me into this single student view. Again, highlights those participation items. I can then proceed to grade and add some feedback to the students. Now, let me go into, let's say, Alex. Oh, wait. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so you notice how I was trying to show this, but then I have not any new participation. So whenever that shows in there, that lets me know that there are new messages inside that discussion forum, so that when you're looking over the course content and someone is adding some comments into that discussion forum, just by that little icon, I have a sense that students have been participating, and so I can go back and look at how, the new posts. So basically, I have a way to look at new posts directly from the stream. I have a way to look at new posts while I'm participating in discussion forum, and also when I'm going through the course, when I'm looking at the content, I also have a notification that there have been new postings inside that discussion forum. So I don't have to expressly go and click on the forum to look at what's going on in my course.
Is it possible to set it for a new, like they have to post first?
Yes.
Before you can open it up?
Yes. So if I create an discussion from scratch, so I select an assessment, participation, discussion. So let's look at the different options that I have here. So I can have a post first section here. I can have this be graded. And again, different, I can also make a group discussion. So I can assign that to groups. Now, the way that groups work is that I can automatically, so as I click on create groups or groups, the system has generated randomly some groups for me, or I can use groups from a previous assignment or a previous activity that I've already created, right? So I don't have to recreate groups again, or I can customize my group. So I can then move this student to group 2, and this student can go to group 1. And once I'm done, just click save, and that's it. So that effectively has created a new group inside for that particular activity, or I could have, used a previously used group. So I don't.
Discussions posted to the gradebook, or not the gradebook, the calendar, the dates when it's due, it actually goes to the calendar.
Yes, yes. So this is participate by, let's say that's tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. So I click that. It does not have the best of names. It's just new discussion, right? But if I go into my calendar, you'll see that tomorrow at that time. Let me change that for you. Yes.
In discussions, how friendly is the program with like axioms and those kind of special characters?
Yes. So as far as I've used it, it's worked. So I can use Spanish language and yeah.
And I know a lot of students like phone sessions. What about like emojis? Students put in emojis and mess up everything.
So it depends on the phone that they're using. Some phones will add a character for it, or some phones will convert that into the text. So we use the standard for emojis.
Probably also about 150,000 emojis a day.
Yeah.
So I think we probably see more like smiley, thumbs up, like the standard ones that you can come across the meters, but not like 50 million.
Somebody puts in emojis like a crazy code.
Yeah. Fireworks, something. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, probably one good thing to say is don't submit something to your Spanish class with an emoji.
Can discussions be shut down so people can't post
Yes.
it into?
Yes, you can always close it or just hide it from students. I apologize for going into my English